Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shak and today I'm going to be going through all of the books I have read in February and March.
Hey, listen!
So it's no secret to literally anyone who watches my channel that I genuinely hate doing reading wrap-ups. Like, I leave them until the last possible second, which is why I am filming this in April and posting it in April. As much as I dislike filming wrap-up videos, I think that they are necessary to somewhat degree because I like to look back on the reads and what I thought of them, and sometimes it's just nice to have all the reads that I have read in one place. Although they're not my favourite videos to film, they are some of my favourite ones to edit and also look back on. So like, I just have to suffer for a minute, alright? I just have to suffer. We do have a lot of books to get through because I read quite a lot of books in February and in March, so without further ado, we're just gonna go ahead and get into it. Let's just go. So in both February and March, I did have themed TBRs. The themed TBR for February was Overwatch games pick my reads. Now I did make a whole video on this, which is kind of why I was reluctant to make a wrap up. If you want to go and see that video though, I'll link it down below because it is one of my favourites that I've ever made. I think it's really funny. I don't really know why. I would recommend though watching it before you watch this video and not afterwards because I'm about to spoil everything that happens in that video basically. So if you have any interest in seeing Overwatch pick my February TBR, then go ahead and watch that because I will be spoiling the books that I read for that. Now, the first book that I did read in February, which wasn't to do with my like Overwatch pickings shenanigans, was Get a Life Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is the first book in the Brown Sister trilogy. This is an adult romance and I did actually do a vlog of this because it is my first adult romance that I have read and I was pleasantly surprised. I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars and you can go ahead and watch the vlog for more in-depth thoughts, but this is basically about Chloe Brown, who is a chronically ill girl who is living in a bubble of like familiarity and she wants to really break out of that. So she decides to move out of her house and create a bucket list, and she enlists the help of Redford, who is the like block of flats supervisor, to help her fulfill everything on her bucket list because she thinks that he can fulfill those. And they're both of them just basically fall in love as they are getting Chloe used to taking risks and making different decisions. I really liked how the writing style of this was extremely simple but effective, and I feel like it really complemented the story and made it more believable. The characters were complex and I really liked seeing the representation with Redford because he struggles a lot with, you know, emotional baggage from past relationships, and I really think it's important for men in fiction to go through these things because that is reality and I think it happens way more often than media portray. So I really enjoyed that aspect of Redford's character. I did think that the sexual scenes were a little bit overly explicit and there was particular scenes of Redford masturbating that I just wasn't a fan of and I just got the ick from it. But other than that, I really did enjoy this. It was a really good introduction to the adult romance scene. I'm not sure if it still is the genre for me because of the explicit nature of it, but I can see myself like really liking other Talia Hibbert books and other books in the genre as well despite that. I did feel as though in this book a lot of the stuff happened by coincidence to fulfill the plot, which is kind of what you expect within a romance book. It is a convention of the genre that everything is magically okay within the last like 5 minutes of the movie or the last 50 pages of the book, and that's exactly what happened in this book. There was like conflict and the conflict was resolved within like 150 pages or something, and I just wasn't a fan of that. But I did enjoy the story, so I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and you can go ahead and watch a vlog if you want to see more thoughts. Okay, now we're getting into the Overwatch books. So if you really haven't seen that video and you want to, now is the time to click away. The first book that I decided to pick up from this challenge was The Kingdom by Jess Ruthenberg. This is basically about a dystopian Disneyland, I suppose you could say, called The Kingdom, where these half android, half human girls are called fantasists, and they are basically programmed to make everyone else's wishes and happily ever afters come true. So whatever that you ask of them, they have to fulfill because it makes you happy, and it's a really good commentary on women and the expectations that we are faced with in society in terms of like beauty standards and emotional standards, and it's just such a good story. The story does follow some really tricky subjects and murder and sexual assault and really like deep subject matter that you would expect going into something like this, like suicide, mental health, so do be careful going into this of those topics. But for the majority of the story we do follow Anna, who has broken through her coding and is feeling emotions, she doesn't really know what to do with it, and she's currently on trial for murder. So it's very interesting in that regard and it's very different to anything that I've ever read before. This was actually a reread, as I've already mentioned, and initially I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I read it for the reading rush, I think in 2019 for the first time, and I just absorbed it. I loved it so much. But this time I kind of like saw a lot of flaws within it and I found it quite weird in places, if that makes sense. It does have a lot of gore and a lot of like disturbing scenes, so if you're into that then definitely give this a try. However, this kind of falls a victim to the same thing that Chloe Brown did, in the fact that all the action happened within the last like 100, 200 pages, and so we got a lot of action at the same time, which made it less believable and kind of felt overwhelming. Also, on my second read of this, I did find that the romance wasn't as believable second time round. Don't know why, I just didn't connect with them, you know, in the optimal way. I just found it really hard to connect with Anna and Owen in this instance. I just don't know why. Maybe it was just the time that I was reading this, the mood that I was in, all of those things. I didn't enjoy it as much, but I don't think it was the fault of the book. I'm not sure. I still stuck with a 5 out of 5 stars because it is still a favourite of mine. The concept, but I do think that parts of the execution weren't, you know, what I remember them to be, if that makes sense. Next, we have 2 more rereads because that's what the challenge told me to do, and that was Clockwork Prince and also Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. These are the second and the last book in the Infernal Devices series, and these are my babies. I love them so much. I won't be discussing them in great detail because I feel like I've just talked about them to death on my channel by now, but I did give Clockwork Prince a 4 out of 5 stars, and I gave Clockwork Princess a 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. Next, we do have Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. I ended up giving this a 3.75. It is the sequel, the second book in the Renegade trilogy. I can't really tell you a lot about what happens in this book because it does spoil for the rest of the series, but essentially the first book, Renegades, is about a like long war between the superheroes, which are the Renegades, and they're basically like superhero police force essentially. On the other side of this very interesting binary opposite, we have the anarchists, which Nova is a part of. We follow Nova and Adrian, who's on the side of the Renegades, and we follow their very slow burn romance, friendship, duo thing, as Nova is sent undercover from the anarchists to the Renegades, like undercover to find out their secrets and how to break them from the inside outwards. I gave the first book, Renegades, a 4 out of 5 stars, so I generally did enjoy it, but this one got from me a 3.75 because I just feel like it was missing a little bit of what Renegades had. And I kind of feel like the problems I did have with Renegades just were kind of exacerbated in this book and carried on, and will carry on throughout the series, you know? I did actually like how this one focused more on the characters and their truths and their stories, their lives, their powers. Something that I really like about this trilogy is the fact that all the characters, all the superheroes and supervillains have extremely unique powers, and this really gave that space to grow and to develop, and I really liked that. We have a few more slow burn romances in this, a few more enemies to lovers, a little bit closer in Nova and Adrian's relationship. The stakes just keep getting higher and higher, and I can't wait to read the last book in the series, although I've heard quite bad things about it, so I'm really anxious to get to it, but I am interested to see how this trilogy finishes, because the stakes do just keep getting higher, and I'm really anticipating a really big finale and ending, which I just don't think that's going to happen because of the reviews it's had. Despite my praise of this book, there are still some things that niggle at me that I don't really like about it. For example, my suspending of disbelief is getting very hard to do so because most of this plot really does depend on coincidence. Because Noah is a spy for the anarchists, a lot of the tension of the novel comes from her being found out by Adrian and all the other renegades that she's befriended and she's beloved and have become a big part of her life. She's going up against these renegades who feel like they are the most smartest, most powerful people in the world right now, and they still can't figure out that Nova is a spy, even though they should have by now. Like, some things in the plot really should have revealed her identity, but they haven't, and it feels like that just happened purely because of coincidence and to generate the story going forward. I just feel like it should have probably come to a head by now, and it hasn't, just because Marissa Meyer wanted the story to continue, if that makes sense. So suspending my disbelief is becoming more and more like difficult because of that reason, but I still really enjoy the story and the characters, and although it is getting harder, I still want to finish and commit to the third book in the trilogy. The next book I read in February I actually unhauled, so that really shows you where my head's at with it. Next I read Slay by Kim Karan. I ended up giving this a 2.5, I believe. So this is basically about a teenage boy band which slays demons but also tours the world. So while they're touring with their music and stuff, and while they are meeting adoring fans, they are secretly on the side fighting demons. I actually really did enjoy aspects of this story. No matter if I gave it a 2.5 or a 5 stars, there's going to be criticism, there's going to be things that I enjoyed. I really do think that the author Kim Karan did an amazing job of writing adult characters, but unfortunately she fell short when writing in teen voices and teen characters, and because most of the cast of this book is made up of teen characters, it fell short, I think, in the writing and the perspective of the characters. Saying this though, there was a lot of diversity in the people that were involved in the story and also their thinking, their experiences. In saying that, I do think there was just so much emphasis on like the, you know, fan element, the music element, and not enough for me on the world building in the demon element. So I was really expecting more of like a Shadowhunter vibe, and I kind of got you know, Wattpad fan fiction. It was a very big disappointment to me, and this may have been my fault for having my expectations too high, but obviously this book wasn't meant for me in my age demographic, and I feel like a younger reader may really enjoy this, you know, someone who is still in that fan fiction, fan stan age, you know, stan Twitter sort of thing. I think they may really enjoy it, but it personally just wasn't for me, and that's okay. The next book that I read in February was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. February was Black History Month, and although I had like a planned TBR already because of the Overwatch picking my reads, I didn't want to like squeeze this in there because I did want to check my performative activism and what I was doing and my contributions and stuff. There's always more work to be done no matter how much of an advocate you are, and I wanted to really celebrate that at least in one read during Black History Month. And I will do better, I promise, in reading more diversely, and I've made a lot of plans to do so within the next few months of the year. So, you know, I wanted to read this in solidarity just because it was Black History Month, and I will continue to do so in the upcoming months. I do recognise that not a lot of my reads have been diverse, but I'm going to try from here on out and here forward. Speaking of, Such a Fun Age is about Amira, who is a black babysitter for this like self-help feminist icon, Alex Chamberlain, who has quite a past of performative activism and some like dodgy things in the past to do with people of colour in her life. And one day, Alex and her husband are the victim of like a break-in. Someone like tries to like smash their window and break in, and they have to deal with that. And whilst they are dealing with that, they ask Amira, who is currently off shift at a party, to go ahead and take their children to the supermarket just to entertain them for a while, just so they can like figure stuff out at home and they don't really see any of the nitty-gritty stuff. Whilst Amira and her friend are like taking their children away from that environment, they are caught at a supermarket and they are accused of kidnapping the children because they are black and the children are white. Amira leaves the scene unharmed, which is very lucky, but it all spirals out of control as somebody at the supermarket was recording the incident, and there's a lot of tension in the fact that is this video going to get out? How is Amira going to deal with this? And what is going to happen between her and Alex? Obviously, I am not an Own Voices reviewer. I'm not a reviewer of colour, and I would really recommend going ahead and reading the reviews for this from people who have this experience and are reviewers of colour. I will link some down below that you can go and read and watch and experience this book in its full capacity. I really did enjoy this book. It really educated me in some aspects, but obviously there is more work to be done, and you can't just read fiction books and expect you to be the best advocate, best reader ever. But I do have this respect for Kylie Reid. I think this is my first book read by them. Because these characters, being an author of colour, it must have been really hard to write as characters and to put yourself in these shoes. I mean, they put themselves probably in these shoes all the time because they are a person of colour, but it must have been really hard to capture that within fiction. I think they did an amazing job at that, and the characters really came to life. In saying that though, I did find some of the writing quite info dumpy, so we had like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of people's past, and I'm just a sort of reader who would rather be like shown these stuff in their actions or in, you know, dialogue or something. I just prefer not to read like chunks and chunks of text to get background or context for certain motivations and stuff, but I completely understand why that was chosen. It just wasn't my thing. It just wasn't for me. That's just not the writing style that I prefer to read. In saying that, I absolutely loved Amira. She's this 20-something who doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life, and I think we need more of that representation in literature, whether they find their path in the end or not. I really related to her because that's exactly where I am in my life, and I could relate, honestly. I really could. I also really like the relationship that Amira and Briar have. I think that, you know, Kylie does an amazing job of writing characters in this book, but particularly they do an amazing job at writing children. Like the way that they write Briar in this, who is Alex's child, who Amira is babysitting, if you didn't know. The way that Briar is written so adorably and so innocent and so just, you wanted to reach through the page and hug the child, like, because obviously they're going through a lot in their household and there's a lot going on in the narrative you just want to protect them from, you know. And I just really liked the relationship between Amira and Briar, and the characterization of Briar as a child is really interestingly and really well done. So yeah, I really did enjoy this overall. I would recommend if you are interested in picking it up, but also go ahead and read and watch some reviews from Own Voices reviewers, because obviously I am speaking with a lens of privilege here, so check the description out for other reviews apart from mine. Okay, now we are coming to my March reads. Now March also had a themed TBR. I was doing the Tis the Damn Readathon, which is hosted by Drinking by Myself and an abundance of other bookish creators, so I'll leave the link to the original announced video for this down below. I'll also leave my original TBR down below so you can see how I changed my TBR and how I maybe stuck to it and stuff. You can go ahead and watch that. There are some spoilers for this video, but if you don't want to, I'm going to be going through the prompts and what I read anyway, so you might as well stick around. Tis the Damn Readathon basically is a readathon that was created to celebrate Taylor Swift's music and reading, and I really had a blast. So here's everything that I read for Tis the Damn Readathon in the first round. The first two books that feature on this TBR were actually part of a secret secret TBR, which is so meta, I know. They were part of a secret Mother's Day vlog where I read 2 of my mum's favourite books that she suggested that I read in a vlog. That vlog is now up, it has been out for a long time, and I will link that down below if you want to see more in-depth views of these 2 books. I won't be going into them too much, but you can watch that vlog in case you want to know more. The first book in this vlog and the first book on my March TBR to fulfill the prompt for self-titled in the Tis the Damn Readathon. This was to read a memoir, and I decided to go ahead and read The Diva Rules by Visage. This is one of my mum's favourite books. This is essentially just a memoir, a non-fiction, like, self-help guide, sort of, from Visage, who was in Seduction and also is a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race. I found this really entertaining, really actually some good, decent advice. I wasn't expecting to actually feel validated and have the advice from this book, but I definitely did. The other book that is featured in that vlog and also fulfills the prompt for fearless, read an intimidating book, a book that intimidates you, is Simmetry by Stephen King. This is so good. Like, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I forgot to say, but I gave The Diva Rules, I think, a 4 stars, yeah. This for me is my first ever Stephen King novel. Like, I had never read Stephen King or watched, I don't think, anything from Stephen King. I might be wrong in that, but definitely haven't read anything by him apart from this now. And I give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I won't talk about my opinions of this. I did really enjoy it, and I think it was a really good, like, depiction of grief and death. It's basically surrounding a family who just go through a lot in terms of grieving and death, and kind of shows us what monsters we can become in the face of grief and death, something that is so, like, certain in our lives. The only thing that probably is certain is death. How this can change people and how the unknown really affects people and turns them into people that they don't even recognise. Yes, go ahead and watch that vlog for both of those 2 books. I'm sorry that I keep pointing you to other videos, but genuinely, this is a lot of books. These are a lot of books I need to talk about, so go ahead and watch that if you want to see more of my thoughts. I really enjoyed this though. Next was for Speak Now, which was to read an audiobook, and I decided to pick up my reread of Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, which is the first book in the Last Hours series. So I reread the first book before Chain of Iron came out. Speaking of, for the reputation prompt, we had to read a book that has romance as a subgenre, and I read Chain of Iron for this. This came out in March, and so I read it as soon as I got my period and I could actually read it. There was a vlog also of me reading this, so you can go ahead and watch that as well. I'm going to be honest, the Last Hours series isn't necessarily my favourite. My favourite is definitely The Infernal Devices, but this does still have the same kind of like vibes as that series does, and I did reread 2 of the books from that in February, so I was very burnt out by the end of Chain of Iron with, like, Cassandra Clare content, as you can probably imagine. I just feel like the 2 of these, they do rely heavily on miscommunication tropes, and I just want to clear up something that I said in my Chain of Iron vlog. I said at the very beginning that I enjoy that trope, but I enjoy it in, like, very small amounts, and, like, the fact that both of these books heavily depend on normally James miscommunicating something is just kind of like lackluster for me, and it just screams lazy to me, to be honest. I gave Chain of Gold a 4 stars, and I gave Chain of Iron a 3.75, which is quite, like, surprising for me. It kind of made me feel the way that the more instruments at the very beginning felt for me, and before I really got into the series. A little bit disappointing, and I feel like it was just kind of like my mood while I was reading them. I was very burnt out with Cassandra Clare content at the time, so maybe it was just that, but yeah, I was very quite, like, disappointed in both of these, but they do have some interesting elements, like with the bracelet, the gracelet. I do still enjoy them. They're just not my favourite, and that's okay. Next, in the Tis the Damn Readathon TBR, I did the lover prompt, and that was to read a 5-star prediction. I decided to go with Pillow Thoughts Volume 4, Stitching the Soul by Courtney Peppernell. I absolutely love the Pillow Thoughts poetry collections. They're all about self-love and healing, and this one particularly is about stitching the soul and healing from past trauma and past relationships. I ended up giving this a 3.75 just because I feel like I enjoyed the other volumes a lot more. I can't really put my finger on why. I just feel like some of these poems were a little bit hit or miss. I did enjoy some of them. There are a lot of, like, dog ears and stuff where I've enjoyed them, but I just don't feel like it was up to the rest of them and up to my expectations, which is kind of sad, but it's fine. It wasn't quite a 5-star, but it still was really good, and I would recommend the series, like the poetry collections, nonetheless. Next, we do have a little bit of a double up on challenges, both for Evermore and Folklore. Basically, for this prompt, I decided to surprise myself with a read using a random number generator, and I'll insert the footage from the TBR video here so you can go ahead and see which book I picked out. For this, I did pick, as you can see, Paper Girls Volume 1. It is a reread, and I did reread this. Yes, I genuinely did, even though I was a little bit skeptical, but I decided to go ahead and jump into this, and I was not disappointed. I also pair this up with the Folklore challenge, which I picked specifically for the song Exile, which was to read a book by, I think, 1 or 2 or more authors. This has 3. It's by Brian K. Vaughan, Cliff Chang, Matt Wilson, and Jared K. Fletcher. I also, because I enjoyed that so much, went on to also pick up the next volume in the series for the red prompt, which was to read a book with red on the cover. This is kind of more pink, but we'll ignore that, it's red, alright? Pink is a shade of red. If you're unaware of what the Paper Girls volumes are about, they follow a group of girls in the 80s who are on their paper run, and in a very strange turn of events, they travel to the year 2016, so they time travel and they meet their older selves, and oh my god, I fell head over heels with that concept immediately. I gave both of the volumes a 4 stars, but I do feel like I prefer the second volume. The reason why I love this so much is because they do meet their older selves and they kind of like see their future and where they're going to grow up and stuff, and there's like a really heartfelt scene between one of the main characters, Erin, and her older self, where they're both thanking each other for what they've done for each other in their lives and stuff, and it just reminded me of my therapy sessions right now, because I am learning to get to grips with my inner child and forgive the things that she had to experience and go through, and kind of like thank her and protect her now that I'm an adult. And this kind of reminded me of that concept. I'm not sure if it was intentional or anything, but that's definitely what I got from it, and I really enjoyed that aspect. If you're looking for like a fantasy, time travel, science fiction graphic novel series to read, this is definitely one that you should definitely try. I believe all of the volumes are now out, so you can just binge them all, and I definitely will be wanting to read the 3rd volume because I really do enjoy these and would highly recommend them. The art style is amazing, the story is really heartfelt, and I really would recommend if you like time travel, it's really good. Well, there you have it. Those are all the books that I read in February and in March, with both of my themed TBRs for the last 2 months. I do feel like I kind of like zipped through them because I generally do hate filming wrap-ups, so those are all the books that I read. Let me know if you've read any of these and share my opinions. Even if you don't share my opinions, then you can go ahead and comment your opinion anyway. Check the description for all the videos that I've mentioned and everything that I've said I would leave in the description box. Editing Shak, I hope that you're okay. I'm sorry that I left you everything to leave in the description, but YOLO, I'm in the past now, you can't do anything, lol. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please give a massive thumbs up if you enjoyed this wrap up. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I have read, or any recommendations that you have based on the books in this video maybe. Give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next week. Until then, I hope that you enjoy any books that you pick up, any productive activity that you manage to do, and I'll see you after the heart. Goodbye!